If you refuse to be vulnerable, your love will be invisible. What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Stephen Motivate, back again with another episode of The Journey. It's the month of February. We're talking about love and relationships. And today we want to really dive into the importance of vulnerability. Vulnerability is one of these things that people try to avoid, especially with strangers or really just everybody. You don't want to show that you're vulnerable, right? We have these shields up. We protect ourselves. We protect our feelings. You can't quite read us. You don't really know what we're thinking, how we feel about a situation. Many times because we refuse to be vulnerable. But vulnerability, and listen to this, vulnerability is the currency of connection. Vulnerability is the currency of connection. Think of the last time you've really connected with someone. I mean, really connected with them deeply. It typically comes in a moment of vulnerability. When you're really deeply connecting with someone, you might spill something, but they spill something at the same time. And then you look at each other and you laugh because it shows that you're both capable of making mistakes, and it's okay. That vulnerability creates then a connection. And that's just an example I made up, but think of your own example. Think of times where you've been truly vulnerable with your parents, with your loved ones, with your siblings, in relationships. Vulnerability is the currency of connection. And so many times if you're dating or even if you're in a relationship, this facade that we put on in order to not be vulnerable and to not come across as our true selves is something we most likely should avoid if we want true connection. Now, this does require a bit of timing, right? You don't want to be completely vulnerable up front. But over time, gradually, you want to continue to be vulnerable with the person you're seeking to partner with or learn from or have a relationship with. Everybody wants to know. My cousin once told me this. Everyone wants to know if you're willing to get blood on you. Now, that's a little scary. He was a UAW negotiator. So he was a union negotiator. And if you know anything about the Midwest and about unions, it's very fierce where they negotiate with management. But there's also several situations where employees will do something wrong that they likely should be fired for. And the UAW, the union, has to represent them and fight for their rights. But when he talked about everyone wants to know if you will get blood on you, his point is that in those negotiations, in those moments where a lot's at stake, folks want to know if you're willing to jump in the fight or not, or if you're going to sit on the sidelines and watch. And so a lot of times leading up to moments like that, leading up to big fights, big negotiations, big decisions where the stakes are high, people want to know in the little fights, in the small arenas, are you willing to get blood on you? Are you willing to be in the fire with me? And you see this sometimes when people, hang out together. You often see if folks want to have a coffee. If you really want to connect with somebody, you may not even like coffee, but 9 times out of 10, someone will say, yeah, I'll take one anyway. Because you're just sitting there, you're trying to connect with them in a similar way that they're connecting. They like coffee, you'll meet them at the coffee shop, you'll fake like you like coffee, at least for that initial moment, because you're trying to create connection. You're trying to see if both of you are willing to step in the mud together, right? And that vulnerability creates connection. And I think this is important because this resistance to vulnerability is really resistance to true connection. And so if you're walking around and you're unwilling to be vulnerable, you're unwilling to connect, you're unwilling to show that you've got mud on your shirt, that you've got a stain, that you're not perfect, that sometimes you get upset and sometimes you lose control and sometimes you're happy and sometimes you're sad and maybe you didn't like the food. If you're unwilling to show your true self, you are blocking off the ability for folks to connect with you. This is really important, especially as it relates to love. Because in love, we get caught up in these grand gestures. Oh, I'm going to give them what they want in abundance over grand gestures that aren't really necessary. Because what you really want is authenticity. And authenticity shows flaws. Authenticity pulls the armor back. My cousin would also tell me, my cousin has passed away now and we were very close, but he would say that, a girl really likes you when she's willing to show you her flaws. And that could be physical or mental or anything like that. But, a lot of time in this world, women have a lot of pressure, especially in our society, in this Western world, to look a certain way, be a certain way, all that sort of thing. And so his point was, if a woman begins to show you things that she would otherwise hide, if she begins to show you skins or birthmarks or things that she doesn't like about herself, but she's willing to show it to you, it's because she really likes you, meaning I'm opening up, I'm being vulnerable, even with things I don't like about myself. I'm willing to show it to you. Then you know that this person probably really wants to connect with you. And that, that's just only one piece to a much larger puzzle. Not true in all cases, but it could be a slight indication that vulnerability, that willingness to show flaws is a prerequisite or precursor to true connection. So vulnerability is the currency of true connection. What I want you to do is ask yourself this: when is the last time you've shown someone the real you? When is the last time you've shown someone the real you? I'm not saying do it all at once. I'm not saying do it on day one, but by day 101, someone should have been able to pull back the layers and see who's really hiding in there. What makes you afraid? What makes you tick? What makes you upset? Because we're all hiding. We put on our clothes and we come out into the world and, we're skeptical. We're on guard a bit. And some of that's good. Some of that's natural. But if you're looking this season of love for true connection, my advice to you is that you've got to start to embrace vulnerability. You've got to be willing to be vulnerable. If you refuse to be vulnerable, your love will be invisible. What's the risk of being invisible? Why do we not want to be invisible? And the risk is that you fall in love, but they fall in love with a version of you that's not the real you. They fall in love with a mask. They fall in love with the person you pretend to be at work, at church, at school. But they don't know the real you. They don't know the person you are. It's funny, in relationships, sometimes you don't really know your potential husband or your potential wife until you see them around their parents. The parents raised them. The parents know who that child is in many cases. And you've never seen your spouse in front of your parents. You probably have not truly seen them yet. And that's why, people advise, take some time, date, see them in different environments, see them around that cousin that's from the hood and don't got a job and drinks and smokes all day. See your family member around them, or see them around their highfalutin rich family members, or see them around their white friends, or see them around their black friends, their Mexican. You've got to see people in different lights in order to see the real version of them. And you don't want an invisible love. You don't want a love that 5-6 years down the road, you find out, gosh, I don't even know who this person is. because they were never truly vulnerable with me. They were always putting on the makeup. They were always putting on the mask. And it's good to put on makeup. It's good to look good. It's good manners to present yourself well in public. However, your relationship must have some privacy where there's vulnerability being exchanged. And the risk is that sometimes we take that public face and we don't know when to turn it off and when to say, okay, this is the real me. Or we don't give anyone any insight into who we truly are. We've got all these emotions, and 1 minute we're upset and 1 minute we're not. But you've never really talked deeply about how you truly feel. Why did me going fast through that red light make you not want to talk the rest of the trip? Well, I have no idea that when you were a kid, you saw an accident or someone passed a red light and da-da-da. And so I don't know the pieces of you that really show what you're afraid of. And so every time you come up to a red light, you're actually afraid. You're actually scared. And that's just an example again, but these are the things of vulnerability. Who are you really? Why do you tick like that? Why do you want to buy expensive things? Like what's making you tick? Why are you not good with your money? Why are you having trouble, saving or investing? Is there some sort of issue? Is there something there where, well, I've never had to think about money, or I've never had to pay a bill, or, my dad or my mom always took care of that. And I just don't understand it, versus I do what I want to do. I don't care. It's my money. Like, you see the two different sides? Like, one is a mask. One is, don't tell me what to do. Don't get to know me. I don't have to explain myself to you. That's the mask. And then one is saying, well, this is who I am because I like this, or this, when I buy this, it makes me feel good. And I do this because I get a feeling from it. And that's the vulnerable side. That's the truth. And you've got to be willing to expose the truth, because you don't want to have a love. You don't want to have a marriage. You don't want to have a relationship where 5 years down the road, you're in love with someone that's not real. It's very interesting because we live in a world, in a society where everyone's showing the best version of themselves, right? It's funny because I was talking to my barber. I got a haircut this morning and I was like, man, I got to take better care of my hair. And if you've ever watched any of my videos, my hair is never like super perfect. And there's something about me. I want to do better in this area. But I also like the fact that when you see me, I don't have a perfectly crispy line and my hair is not manicured to perfection, because it's the real me. And in social media world, we always look for these perfect versions of everyone, when really the things that seem to get the most traction is the real you, the rawness, you without the makeup, you without the fancy car, you with tears running down your face. People want to see the real versions of you. And that inevitably creates connection. If you refuse to be vulnerable, your love will be invisible. Your vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a strength. I'm a short guy. I'm probably, with boots on, maybe 5'7". And I'm talking about boots with a significant sole. And I don't like being short. I wanted to go play in the NBA. I wanted to go dunk on people and make a bunch of money and, be the world leader of assists. But at some point I realized, and it wasn't until I got to college, actually, when I saw these Big Ten athletes, and I'm like, what in the world? These guys are like 6'7", and it was like 7 of them. And I'm like, whoa, I am a shrimp. I'm tiny. And it really hit me. And it was a moment of vulnerability for me. So even back when I was in high school, I would always try to wear shoes with a significant sole so I could be a little bit taller. I wouldn't be embarrassed about my height. And so it's, I think I've worked through it pretty good. to this point, but it's still, it's always a little jab and a poke, and it's okay. Mostly because I understand it about myself. I understand now that I'm a short person, and it's kind of comical because in my mind sometimes I think I'm the same height as people. And I remember back when I was young and in college and partying and we were drinking, and I'm like getting into arguments with people twice my size. And if it weren't for some of my friends like protecting me, I probably would have been pummeled or in the hospital or have broken bones or something. But now that it's a known thing that I'm a short person, and it's something I really can't hide anyway, even though in times past I tried to. When it comes to my relationships, it was always important for me to kind of actually talk about this. Hey, I'm a short guy. Do you like short people? Is that a problem for you? Like, trying to gather some real info about, is this an issue? Like, because if it is, let me know up front. I don't want to fake it and then, come to find out 10 years down the road, you really love guys that are 6'6". That vulnerability ended up being a strength, mostly because it could end things that I didn't need, and it could truly solidify things that I did as it relates to relationships. If that makes sense. It's super important that you recognize that vulnerability is not a chink in the armor. It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a door to your greatness. I'm a short guy, but I'm super smart. I'm a short guy, but because I'm short and I can't fight, I have to think about things. Well, I'm not gonna say I can't fight, but it's not wise for me to try to fight with everyone because I'm a short guy. So I have to think differently about things, and I have to think about, I can't just get upset and try to fight this person. How could I think differently about how we could solve this issue? And so my shortness, that vulnerable thing is actually a strength for me, because if I was this big 6'9" guy with huge muscles and people just did what I said because I came in the room and they were intimidated by me, it would really limit my ability to think. Because if you're that big and that you command that much respect, you can just pound your way through life, right? And just move out the way do it because I said so. Versus I have to learn to think, how can I influence people differently? How can I try to get their participation? So I have to use my mind more. And because I have to use my mind more, it actually becomes a strength for me. And so I'm able to navigate the world. And another great thing about being short, people aren't intimidated by me naturally. And because they're not naturally intimidated by me, it's easier for me to create connection with people, because they don't automatically think, oh, this guy's going to rob me or beat me up. And now you get some of that just being black or if you got your hood up. But I'm able to develop connections with people more readily because they're not just automatically intimidated by my size. And so I say all this to say, your vulnerable points can be strengths if you just open up. I can always have a laugh at the expense of myself with someone because I'm short, and it creates camaraderie. It calms people down. It allows me to have strong relationships, whether this is about love or about friendship or about a boss or leader. You've got to be vulnerable. And the whole point of today's talk is that if you're not vulnerable, if you refuse to be vulnerable, your love will be invisible. The connection you want won't be real. The authenticity that you need, even if it's a worker boss or an employee boss relationship, be authentic with your boss. Be real, be vulnerable. Hey, I wanted that job. Hey, I wanted to make more here. I don't understand why I'm not. So you can learn, so you can grow, so people can know where you're at. The sooner you take off the shields, take off the armor, stop hiding your vulnerability. Stop hiding why you have an attitude. Why do you have an attitude today? Why do you have bad energy today? Let somebody know. Don't just, that's childish. It's not the best version of you. Be the best version of yourself. And it starts with, I know it sounds like a weakness. I know you think it's things you want to hide, but it starts with vulnerability. If you refuse to be vulnerable, your love will be invisible. I hope that helps you as much as it's helped me in life. Be vulnerable and you'll be glad you did. You will make true, deep connections with folks and you'll reap the benefits of those relationships. All right. This is your boy, Stephen Motivate. Subscribe. If you like this, share it with someone. Until next time, stay motivated. Peace.